Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Peter, for this great conversation. Thank you so much. We are moving on, and our next item in the agenda is a panel discussion on defense innovation in practice. So we can theorize as much as we want about what the innovation should be looking like when applied in military, applied in defense, but we have some people this time who can actually talk about what it looks like from the inside. And this next panel looks at approaches to innovation in the military and with the military, and we are about to learn more on how the military actually works with the tech sector and at the innovations that are supporting these relationships. The clusters, the reservists, the new approaches to adoption of novel technologies. It brings together 3 dedicated and experienced leaders from Sweden and Denmark to share their lessons and experience. So I would like to invite to this stage our amazing panel for the next 25 minutes. Please come on stage, Paul Østergaard, the Senior Advisor AI for the Danish Defense Command, a tech entrepreneur deployed as a reserve officer to help shape Denmark's military AI strategy. Please take a seat. Now we have Johan Vaernholt. The head of strategy at Ideon Science Park, also founder of the Amyna platform, working with the innovative South Skåne Regiment in Sweden. Johan is a former professional military officer. He has served on international deployments in Kosovo, in Chad, and in Afghanistan, so he has a unique perspective on defense innovation and on the practical implications thereof. Please, a round of applause for Jonah. Next up, we have Lieutenant Colonel Andreas Ziegenfeldt, the Deputy Commander of the 7th Mechanized Brigade of the Swedish Army. He leads the development of brigade-level command and control, including integration of modern digital systems. His work focuses on experimentation, rapid technology adoptions, and NATO interoperability. Please give a warm round of applause to Andreas. And to moderate this conversation, who would have been better than Sune Rasmussen, the foreign correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. His reporting focuses on European security, including terrorism, transnational organized crime, and the shifting security landscape following Russia's invasion in Ukraine. He also leads the journal's coverage of security in the Arctic. That's a big topic as well, especially lately. Now, please give a round of applause to this panel, and the floor is all yours. 25 minutes of a great conversation. So much looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Now, what we've been listening to today is a lot of discussion about solving procurement issues. How do we get the newest tech into the hands of people on the front line as quick as possible? This panel here actually has suggestions and solutions that they're working on as we speak. One of the questions that we've also been talking about here is how do we get tech companies to speak to industry, to speak to military, to speak to the public sector. And we're fortunate enough to be joined by, well, 2 of you actually who are working on something that's so fresh that it was inaugurated last week. Johan, maybe you can start us off by introducing ELRIX. What is it? What does it stand for? All I know is that it's based in Ideon Science Park, which before today I knew because it was created by the founder of IKEA, and that's also where they create Oatly milk. But they do much more than that out in the Ideon Science Park.
Yeah, in general, Ideon Science Park, say the legacy is 400 companies with roughly 11,000 employees, having 12 international R&Ds within it. And, well, it's not really founded by IKEA, it's just paid for due to a tax dispute in the early 80s. But in the legacy, we're having Bluetooth and all other technologies as well. Well, what's ELRIX and what's the Science Park's role within this? Well, I think in general, it all comes down to letting people meet and being confident with that meeting. And we're looking at the industry. The primes haven't really been collaborating because they've always been competing over the same budget. And now they have to collaborate. University hasn't worked with armed forces and so forth. It's just creating a platform for people to meet on neutral terms. And within that, we're, as we said, had the inauguration last week, trying to get the one-stop shop for so getting the quadruple helix within the science park, within the buildings, with academia, the armed forces, the procurement agencies, the public sector, and startup, scale-ups, SMEs. So a one-stop shop for the industry to iterate on the problems that the armed forces are facing, basically.
And Andreas, you're with the South Skåne Regiment, also known as P7, which is unusual, I know, because it moves faster. It's, in a way, thrown out the rule book for how you do some of these things. I asked you earlier today when we were having coffee, like what you do differently. And you use colorful language that I probably can't expose this esteemed audience to, but you said, we don't give a damn, more or less is what you said. Can you tell me what is it you do differently in P7? Like, how do you compare to other military units, and how do you work with the science park?
Okay, thank you. So first of all, always get a question, what is P7 stands for? And it says armor, so it's Panzer in German and Panzer in Swedish, so that's a brigade. Now, the brigade was cut back in 2010 and abandoned, and we stayed 1 battalion roughly, fully professional. And now we try to go from 0 brigades up to 4, and the 7th Mechanized Brigade is the last one in line. And that means that there is no actual plan yet for the brigade, and then we have the possibility to change our own destiny. So that's the first reason. The brigade has also, after the cutbacks, was the first full-time professional battalion. So we started very, very early to focus on missions abroad, Afghanistan, Iraq, Mali, Balkans, and so on. So, and that made the peacetime perspective is absent within the regiment. It's more like a war-fighting regiment. And that is very important, since we try to do what we can with what we have. And another reason for this was that I was the former head of development in the Swedish Army, and the chief of the Swedish Army told me, you are the deputy brigade commander, do whatever you can to make a C2 system, but you only have a small amount of money, you have almost no officers, and you must be ready within 1 year. So it's, and I asked if it's possible to be ahead of schedule. So I think it's a cultural thing mostly, because as you said before, we don't really care if someone don't like it.
And before we go to Paul, do you have like an example of an innovation or a project or something that's come out of this sort of closer collaboration between industry and tech sector and the military?
Yeah, well, we have, but not in Sweden. We had one Ideon company going to Finland, and also part of the problem, because the first contact with the armed forces was that they were able to iterate with the French special forces. And I feel like if we're having a regiment 10 kilometers away, they shouldn't have to go to France to iterate. But in general, I think it's a cultural problem. We're always being closed domains. We're used to talking about tech, but I would say it's 90% a cultural problem, because we're both on the industry side and in the government side. It's you have done your career of being risk avert and holding timelines and budgets, and now you're going to do the same thing. Like you mentioned Oatly before. Oatly was used to be a medtech company. Then they hired a CEO who only was known for driving good nightclubs in Malmö, and made it a global company. I think that's one of those things we have to make a change within the industry and within the armed forces as well. Just getting out other perspectives and not having those risk-averted persons left within the organizations.
Mm. Paul, you have a past both in the military but also in the private sector with your own companies, including in AI, and then you decided to return to the military. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of what drives you and what what has led you through both tech and the military, and why you think what you're doing today. I know you feel really driven by what you do today. Maybe you can explain also what that is that drives you.
Well, I was an officer back during the Cold War and up through the 90s, and looking back now, I realize I really didn't fully understand what I was, why I was doing what I was doing in those days. As I've gotten older, I've come to take very seriously the job of protecting and securing our country. So when I left the military, I started technology companies. When I moved back to Denmark in 1819, I had a sense, like other people did, that the world was sort of running off track, and I just had a strong desire to get back in and support the military. So I rejoined the reserves in early 22. A couple of months later, the Ukraine war kind of made it obvious why we needed to focus a bit more on security, and I realized that my whole background of building technology companies was actually very useful to the military, who had been starved of technology and investment for many years, for understandable reasons. I think the first 10 years of this century were, I think, the only time in history where countries spent more on healthcare than on protecting themselves. And we all thought the world was heading into eternal peace. But it's changed now, and I realized that technology was going to be our chance. So last year, especially AI that I've been working with for 6 or 7 years. I think AI is a big risk to the world, and it's a big threat to many things. But it's also an opportunity for a small country, small, well-educated, agile country. We're going into an age of asymmetry, where you don't have to be big to be strong if you're just smart. So I think it's a great opportunity for Denmark and other small countries. If we can figure out how to be ahead. So my focus now is on making the Danish defense the most AI-enabled in the world.
But there must be an inherent obstacle here as well, because for decades, the people who procured stuff in the military had one main concern, right? That was to not get arrested. Don't get arrested for buying the wrong stuff. And now all of a sudden they have to spend a lot of money on a lot of kind of untested equipment just to keep up. Like, how do we solve that sort of
I mean, to start with, if you're an officer, you do know how to operate in an environment of risk. You do know how to make decisions under uncertainty. You do know. That's why you got trained. This is where I learned it as a young officer. But in the last 20 years, there have been other priorities, understandably. Such as not risking, minimizing risk, doing things that were predictable, and I think it's a necessary cultural shift. And it's not just because of geopolitical things. It's also because technology right now is accelerating so fast that you cannot live in a world where you think you can predict the future. You have to create the foundation for innovation and agility. So it's not just the military and government institutions, it's all institutions that are having to change right now. And I think the way we're approaching it is seeing it as a leadership challenge more than anything else. It's a mindset transformation. And the good news is the technology can help us. We're rolling out a large language model to the Danish military in a few months, and I think just giving everybody a feel for what can be done with all this cognitive power at your fingertips is gonna help create the conditions for that transformation, I think.
Yeah, and I reckon also the way you look at technology is also a cultural thing, because you buy a computer and then you stock it and then you hand it over and then you bring it back, like with all other army equipment. And I reckon the shift of that tech is consumables. That's a perception they have to be pushed through, and also that things will never be ready. It will always need to be updated, always have to be improved, and that you can't really buy the finished product. And that's also a shift that have to be put into the systems as well.
Yeah. But this is our cultural trip as well. We repeatedly tell our young officers and soldiers that they can do whatever they want almost, but not because they're lazy, not because they don't completely understand anything. So as long as they keep out of in the box what they understand, as long as not lazy or not doing that for themselves, it's understandable and sometimes forgettable. But try to do instead of waiting of an order. Do it, and that culture is a shift. And our young officers and soldiers are very good at it, especially when it comes to technology.
Yeah. One of the issues that I've heard people raise is also that when you procure things, these like systems are obviously a tech company will be an international tech company, often with an international scope, but national militaries have national procurement regulations and rules. How do you solve that? Like, do you guys is that something you come across in your work as well?
Yeah, well, I would say there are a lot of solutions, and I think that's where we have to work on a Nordic perspective to get to the lessons learned between the organizations and stop working within silos with like Sweden or Finland or Denmark or Norway, but just having a good connections of lessons learned, because there are ways to do it, there are exceptions to be used and so on and so forth, but there have to be the right people to have the skill and the guts to use those exceptions and push those decisions through. And I think that's what I mean, where the main problem is cultural and not really a tech problem or procurement problem, because it's same with life science. We managed to get the COVID vaccine within a short amount of time. So if there's a will, there's a way, and then I think also it's time to start pushing those people who say it's important but don't really want to back it up with money or with manpower, because that's something we've been hearing a lot of on these kind of conferences as well. So if it's important, well, then you have to show it, basically, because, yeah.
Paul, you were nodding.
No, I think that particular point is more important than ever, because we're now entering an age where, data or even the core understanding of how we do things is now being shared on global AI models, etc. So I think, which is my area of expertise, I think thinking through very carefully your sovereignty, where from a perspective of sovereignty, or if you're a business, your core competency, what are the things that you need to own yourself and control yourself? And that stack, so to speak, is shifting right now. So it's a very important consideration. That doesn't mean you can't use technology from other countries, from all sorts of places, but you need to separate out exactly which parts of it do you need to retain for yourself. And that's a shift that's particularly important right now, because we're all right now teaching global AI models how to do our jobs, and I think every military organization, every civilian organization needs to be very conscious of that and decide what to keep for themselves, aside from all the hardware and all that. But the hardware is almost secondary to that in the long term.
It's very, very hard to turn a big organization, and there are two scholars, August and Schoen, and they talk about this single loop, double loop, and triple loop learning. I don't know if you have heard about it, but single loop learning is, the question is always, are we doing right? Are we doing right? But within innovation and double loop learning, it's more like, are we doing the right thing? Now, if you come to transformation, it's called triple loop learning, and the question is more like, how do we even know what's right? Is it the lessons learned from Ukraine? Is it the technology development? Is it the NATO or the Swedish culture from back then? And we really don't know. The problem is, when you're in an organization and try to be speed up, is that if you're in double loop or triple loop learning, you still ask the questions or try to get something out of a single loop learning guy says, yeah, maybe, but that's in 2029. You're not supposed to do it yet. So, and that cultural makeshift is very important. So if it's a civilian company, for example, you normally change the board if you turns 90 degrees, or you build a new company. But the army is very hard to turn, and we've learned that. And what we have done right now, that's single most important thing, is we trust our soldiers, and we have insourced all the software development. So we use soldiers. I can just text them, and I will have some function in my system tomorrow. It's very, very good. And we use also, Nikolai Bremsen was here before, talked about systematic. We use that as a frame, but then we create all the add-ins and add-ons, so we know what we're supposed to purchase before we do it.
I think we have time for just one more question. We're going to throw it out to all three of you to answer, and it's a yes or no question that probably can't be answered with a yes or a no. But an earlier panelist on the stage today said that the military simply doesn't have the necessary innovative capability. Is that true? Andreas, do you want to start?
Sadly, I think so.
How do you solve that? Is what you're doing, for example,
that's one thing.
Is that a model?
You need to, like the Ukrainian guys told us before, or someone else in that panel, that you have to give some money to the unit. Because if you can observe something, and you can analyze it, and you can decide, but it takes 4 years before you get the money, you can't do anything. So you need to have the money. And after 3 days, you maybe say, well, this was completely wrong analyzed. We need to change. And then you have to wait another 4 years to get that decision. It simply doesn't work. So you need to have some money.
Do you guys want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'll go.
Yeah, hold on.
I think it's about humans, whether humans have the capability of adjusting and becoming open to change, whether you can change the mindset of humans. And I think the answer is yes. And I think, again, in my area where AI is accelerating everything right now, I think it's a great opportunity to take people who may have become a little bit disillusioned, who were idealists and innovative in their 20s, and they've now been living in a public organization for 20 years, and they've lost faith in the fact that things can change. I think we can change, bring those people back to where they came from, and I think this is what we need to do. I think we don't have a choice. I think it's possible. So yes.
Yeah, well, I would say yes as well. I think it's just getting the people the right framework for change and providing that.
And do you think what you're doing with LRIX and the Science Park can sort of be replicated elsewhere?
Yeah, well, that's the main goal, getting it, be able to replicate it throughout Sweden and Denmark, if that's of interest as well. But we're doing this, we're doing the best try, and then just having our lessons learned within the Nordics to see whatever works, and so we don't replicate the bad things.
It all starts with guilting the billionaires in your country into building something for public good, or pay their taxes, basically, as a part of a tax dispute. That's where it all begins, right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to my panel, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks, guys. Thank you.